Tom Wilson signs a 7-year contract extension.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holney. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you guys can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. In today's episode, we will talk about Tom Wilson gets a 7-year extension. A collective sigh, Caps fans, as we don't need to worry about it all off season. And, part of the end of the season, all we heard about was the possibility of Tom Wilson getting traded. I heard it from many talking heads that it could happen at any moment. Tom Wilson could get just rushed out of town. And then what would we do? Alarms going off. As it turned out, it wasn't the case. And they ended up getting him under contract pretty much around a year ahead of time. So good on the Capitals for doing that. We'll talk about that in the show. Then we'll talk about how he is poised to be an elite company. No, not just a goon, just not a tough guy. He has a true skill set, a goal scorer, and we'll talk about that company that he's in. And then we'll talk about ultimately what he brings to this team. It's ultimately my opinion that he is the heir apparent as the captain of the Capitals when Alex Ovechkin finally hangs up the skates. But just to get it going here, we will talk about the details of Tom Wilson's new deal. And how I found out about it was I was at work today, kind of just a regular Friday, and all of a sudden, beep, beep, my phone goes off, and then multiple beep, beep, beeps, and I take a look at it. I get a notification from the Capitals. I get a notification from a bunch of the different beat writers that cover the team. I'm like, well, this, deserves some investigating. As I turn out, there it is. Ta-da! Tom Wilson gets a 7-year extension. We don't need to talk about Tom Wilson getting traded for quite some time, as he will be a Capital for the long term. And I am, as a Caps fan, am happy. You as Caps fans should be happy. This is a great day for the Capitals. Just let's review what has happened this past season. The Capitals had a rough season, a myriad of injuries, didn't even make it to the playoffs. We go to the draft. The draft was pretty good, all things considered. That was a happy note. Then we take a look at free agency. So just my feelings as I'm going into August here, and training camp coming up here in the future is kind of mixed feelings about how I think the Capitals are going to do. But on a Friday to get a notice that Tom Wilson signed a 7-year new deal, that just made my Friday. As someone that covers his team and is a big fan, I'm excited. And let's just kind of take a look at the contract and what it means. Again, he still did have one more season left under contract with the Capitals. Wilson will be entering the final season of his contract. The new contract keeps Wilson with the Washington Capitals through the 2031 season. It's 2023. Oh my God, don't make me do the math and think about how old I'm going to be when his contract expires. I'm not going to think about it. Wilson's contract carries an average annual value of $6.5 million. The 29-year-old recorded 13 goals and 9 assists in the 22-23 season. What is one of the things that we know about this past season is that he missed a lion's share of the season because of that knee injury he suffered in the first game of the playoffs the season before against the Panthers. And he came back, and even though he played in, a limited amount of time, he nailed it. And so it kind of makes you wonder how the Capitals would have done if they had Wilson and Backstrom and Carlson the entire season. It's kind of always been my belief that they would have been a wild card team, but now next season, we can put last year in the rear view. I don't need to talk about that anymore. It's all positivity going forward as we head into next season. Don't get me wrong. I hope they make some big additions, but signing Tom Wilson to 7 years, was exactly what the doctor ordered. I've always been of the opinion, pay the guy what he wants. Give him the checkbook, have him fill it out. He deserves it. He has a lot of tools in his tool set, and he brings those every night that he is with the Capitals. Just taking a look, at the backstory and who he was. The Capitals selected Wilson at number 16 during the 2012 NHL draft. Through 680 games played, Wilson has 128 goals and 167 assists. So, to a lot of the people that are kind of casual NHL fans or NHL fans outside the DC market, yeah, he is not just a tough guy. He's not just a fighter. He has those skills in his skill set as well, but it's above and beyond that. The leadership skills, like I talked about, the future captain, in my estimation, a goal scorer, and just an all-around leader and great person to be around, and kind of a mentor, I think, for a lot of the guys on the team. And it's funny that he's younger than a lot of the guys on the team, but some of the older guys, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, look up to him, and so he's a very interesting character. He is a unicorn or a four-leaf clover, or if you want to use a term such as that, but he is a unique player, and I am happy that the Capitals found a way to get him that 7-year deal. There was a comment that was made from his agent saying it's normally better to take care of these things a year in advance, because if you wait too long, then all of a sudden things can really start to get hairy, if you know what I mean. Then all of a sudden, teams are really starting to throw all kinds of offers in there. And I think that, at the end of the day, Tom Wilson did, in fact, want to retire a Capital. And the conspiratorial people, myself included, he did say stranger things have happened and all that kind of stuff. And I think, ultimately all he was saying is, hey, sometimes things are out of your control. I want to be here, but, if for some reason they wanted me out of here, then I'll be out of here. We can push that all away. He is going to be here, and he is going to be here for a significant amount of time. How is this significant, you might ask? Is that, like I say, Alex Ovechkin is going to be hanging up the skates potentially in 3 years. That is the duration of his contract. Could he ultimately sign an extension? Sure, but I mean, he is not going to be playing probably his best hockey at the end of his career. So that is where Tom Wilson fits in. And, they paid him a healthy sum of money, but he brings a lot, and he could have got that money on any of the other teams in the NHL. So I think the Capitals did the right thing, that we locked Tom Wilson up for the long term. We really didn't need him getting away, because no matter who it was, and we heard all kinds of crazy talk about, Nylander and all these different things, and that the LA Kings were kicking the tires on him. There is not a player out there, and I know I heard a lot on Twitter. Are you kidding me, Dan? There's a lot of players that we could get that would be great in return. Not for me. I think that a lot of people are hung up on statistics, taking a look at stat graphs and, all this kind of stuff. I know what I see on the ice. And sometimes you just got to take the stats and crumple them up, or close the window on your computer and say, I know the product that I'm seeing out on the ice. And I don't need any convincing. The Tom Wilson, the jersey that I hang over my shoulder here, there's a reason for that. I also have an Ovechkin one, but there is a reason that I purchased a Tom Wilson jersey with my hard-earned money, is because I see the player beyond all the, he's had, fighting suspensions and all this other kind of stuff. And, they could probably get a lot better player for him. It's all nonsense for me. I know the guy who he is. And for me right now, I've said this as long as I've done this podcast and previous podcasts, that I see him as being the captain of the Capitals. And I think Capitals fans expect it coming soon after Alex Ovechkin retires. All right, so coming up straight ahead here, we will talk about what he brings to this team, and ultimately, what are some of his teammates saying about him? We'll talk about that straight ahead. Covering my nutritional basis for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust AG1. I just mix one small scoop with water and drink it first thing each morning, Done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with a high quality sourced ingredients. For me, it's a win win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1 year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure and subscribe or follow Locked On Capitals wherever you find your podcasts, as I have a lot of great guests lined up, not to mention the training camp and the new season is starting soon. So subscribe to Locked On Capitals today. All right, in this next segment here, we are going to talk about what Tom Wilson brings to this team. Yes, it's hard to believe, but there's some people that just kind of revere him as this player or that player. His teammates, the guys that are in the trenches with him, they know what kind of player he is. I talked about in the first segment that oftentimes younger players look up to older players. Tom Wilson's a unique character in the regard that there is older players looking up to a younger player. So I think that Tom Wilson cast a wide shadow. And why do so many people around the NHL have a hard time with Tom Wilson? Because he makes his presence known when he's on the ice. If you are going to try to push around one of the younger guys, or if you're going to try to take advantage of him in any kind of way, let's take a look back on that Panarin thing. I know that was, 2-3 years ago, but Panarin jumped on his back. What was Tom Wilson supposed to do? But how was it painted by the New York media is that, oh, poor Panarin and bad Tom Wilson, he jumped on his back. You know what? Mess around and find out. Have you ever heard that saying, except mixed up a little bit? That's what happens. You play with the bull, you get the horns. Guess what? They played with Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson gave them the horns. Simple as that. I don't need to make it any simpler than that. And you want to know something? I think that a lot of people around the NHL, that is why they have a problem with him, because he is not afraid of standing up for himself. He's not afraid of standing up for this team. And if you want proof positive, take a look at the beginning of last season. Ottawa stands out to me more than anything. Back when Garnet Hathaway was still here, the Senators, they smelled it. They smelled the weakness within the ranks of the Capitals, that there were not a lot of tough guys out on the ice. And I know I hear a lot of things around the NHL from these people that know everything. There's a lot of experts out there that said fighting has no place in hockey. And tough guys like Tom Wilson really don't have a place in hockey. I'm here to tell you it does. Because if you remember back to that Ottawa game, Garnet Hathaway was punching people with both arms, trying to take on pretty much the entire Ottawa Senators team. Why is that? And then all of a sudden, the interesting thing for me, just, if you want exemplification or a litmus test, is that later in the season, when Tom Wilson was back, for example, they were playing the Coyotes, and there was two guys kind of roughing it up. All Tom Wilson had to do was skate into the vicinity, didn't say anything, just his presence came by, and everyone scattered away. That's what I'm talking about, casting a wide shadow. That is what he brings to this team. But before I go any further, I want to make the one thing clear is that I do respect Tom Wilson, the player. I would love to have him on the show. He's just a real hard guy to get a hold of, if you know what I mean. But is that he has developed his game. If you look at the very beginning of his career, he was a big guy, kind of has grown into his frame, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of why I think that maybe Leonard is following that trajectory. But if you take a look at, he's grown into his body. And when he first came into this league, he was a bull in the China shop. He was fighting everyone. And, to a certain extent, to his detriment, that he was, that's why he got suspended so many times. But what we have seen in Tom Wilson is the evolution as a player. He looked to the, Alex Ovechkin, the great eight, and he saw you don't have to fight every fight. When is the last time that Alex Ovechkin got into a fist fight? Svechnikov, if memory serves, and that has been quite some time. I want to say it was 2019 and it's 2023. You don't always need to drop the gloves. You got to pick your battles. Now, I'm not saying that Alex Ovechkin and Tom Wilson are an apples for apples comparison, but the one thing that I've known in Tom Wilson as his game has grown, he's not fighting everyone that wants to fight him. There are some fourth line fill in players, AHLers that want to make a name for themselves, oftentimes want to step up to someone like Tom Wilson. You want to know something? Save that kind of activity for Ryan Reeves. He is more than happy to oblige you in those kind of tactics because at the end of the day, all Reeves really is a junkyard dog. Tom Wilson, just a couple seasons ago, rounded out the top three in goals with the Capitals: Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, and Wilson. So that's what I'm talking about. If there's people listening to this podcast around the NHL, outside the DC market, know this: Tom Wilson's back next year, and you better look out. That's all I'm saying. If anything that you got away with last season, pushing the Capitals around, if Tom Wilson is healthy the duration of next year, the next 7 years or so are going to be a problem for you because there is an enforcer in town. I like to call Tom Wilson the sheriff. He kind of rolls into town and takes care of business. And when he's not taking care of business, he's scoring goals. So that's what it's about, NHL, and that's my biggest message, and some frustration that kind of boils over in me. And when I do the interviews with different podcasts or writers or that kind of thing, and they'll try to throw in a cheap shot saying, well, Tom Wilson, he's just this tough guy. They need someone on this team that has a bigger and better skill set. It's all nonsense to me. You obviously have not watched a lot of games when he's involved, and that's what I'm saying here. But taking a look, and what do the Capitals, what does the team, what do they think of him? Tom possesses all the intangibles needed to win in this league, and we are extremely pleased to sign him to a long-term contract, giving him the opportunity to finish his career in a Capitals uniform. Brian MacLellan. I'm going to say here, hats off go to him, Brian MacLellan, for doing the right thing. That is a sign of respect for me. I haven't taken this hat off during the show since I've done it. So if you want a sign of respect, that is the ultimate sign of respect to Brian MacLellan, because I don't know what the Capitals would have done minus him from the equation. A lot of question marks. A lot of those question marks, you can take a pencil and kind of erase some of those out a little bit. They're coming a little bit, into focus a little bit. So I'm really happy that he got it done. And it was causing a bunch of strife and stress for Brian MacLellan, as well as he was staring daggers at the press going, who's talking about this? I think it was Tarek El-Bashir that brought it up, but he was looking at all the press corps, and hey, it was some prominent people that did that. If you take a look at Elliot Friedman did it, and Stephen Wino, both prominent guys. Stephen Wino from the AP and Elliot Friedman. Hello, we all know who Elliot Friedman is. 32 Thoughts podcast analyst, that kind of thing. So suffices to say, a good day for the Capitals as they got that taken care of. And again, a feeling of security for this team. And I already, even though he's one player, I feel a lot better. I know that we signed Pacioretty and Edmondson in small moves, in my estimation. Is it ultimately going to make the Capitals a lot better? I'm here to tell you, I'm at least feeling slightly more optimistic about next season with Wilson in the fold. So I am happy about that. And as Caps fans, if you can find something to be negative about this, then I think that you really need to re-examine the way you think about things. Because I think he's, well-loved amongst all Capitals fans anyway. And if maybe you have a problem with the term, that is some of the things that I've heard on Twitter. I can't believe they're giving him that long. You know how old he's going to be by then? Who cares? I mean, there are no certainties in life, but for what I know right now, this is a Friday as I record this. I'm happy as a Capitals fan that number 43 here is going to be playing for the Capitals for quite some time. And you as Capitals fans should feel good about it as well. All right. So coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about how Tom Wilson is poised to be in elite company. This is what I'm talking about. Don't pigeonhole him as just this goon, just this tough guy. He's much more than that. What am I talking about? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're an everydayer of Locked On Capitals, you know my thoughts on Tom Wilson. You know I've spoke on this show about what other players are saying about him. But something else that we should dig into a little bit here is just his skill set and how Tom Wilson is, closing in on being in elite company. We take a look at it here. Following a full offseason spent training rather than rehabbing, Wilson is poised to be a member of the Capitals' top six in 23-24, writes NBC Sports Washington. With his new deal in hand, he'll also be in position to start making a dent in some franchise record. The 29-year-old is tied with center Evgeny Kuznetsov for 15th most games played in a Capitals uniform at 680. A full season's worth of games would push him up to ninth on that list. So again, he is an elite company as far as the Capitals are concerned, and just kind of knocking down these different milestones, kind of following the same path as another prominent Capital. Who could I be talking about? Oh, I've got it, Alex Ovechkin. As we take a look at it here, the NHL didn't start tracking hits until 07-08, but Wilson ranks 20th among all NHL skaters in that category with 2,039, with only Alex Ovechkin, who has 3,110 standing in the way of him in the franchise record. Wilson's 1,299 penalty minutes are good for third among all Capitals players behind Dale Hunter with 2,003 and Scott Stevens with 1,299. This is a great path. This is a great trajectory. I think in a lot of ways kind of similar to Alex Ovechkin, like I talked about, already tied for 10th in the postseason games played by a Capital with 83. Wilson has 14 playoff goals and 17 assists under his belt. He sits within striking distance of the top 10 for both categories, and his ability to maintain his production deep into his 30s will go a long way in determining how many chances he gets to improve on those totals. Again, this piece in NBC Sports Washington. So again, that is the big thing for me, is just to kind of, take a moment and look at the new contract, but also to kind of realize what kind of player the Capitals have in Tom Wilson, and to be happy at the end of the day, because it is not just me saying that. There are a lot of people in the Capitals and some of the players that are really happy about it, and none other than TJ Oshie. The 36-year-old took to social media to celebrate his fellow right wing's new 7-year, $45.5 million deal, and he didn't hold back. Right side. Congrats on 7 more years, Tom Wilson. Not many I've seen with that same amount of heart and love for his teammates and his organization and his fans, Oshie wrote on Instagram. This guy leaves everything on the ice every night. He leads by example and protects his own. Earned his spot on the team from fighting and penalty killing and tough minutes to the top line, power play, and scoring. Big goals. Again, that was the assessment of TJ Oshie. And that's what I'm talking about. TJ Oshie, he is the one that's looking up to him. And, Oshie's been in the league longer than him. So it is quite an accolade. It is quite a thing for him to say. Wilson is a 3-time 20-goal scorer, like I talked about. So he is in that elite company. Oshie continued with a huge compliment to Wilson's character. I hope my sons grow up a lot like Tom Wilson. Oshie wrote, good work, Mac, because I'd given him 10 million. Wow, if that is not a ringing endorsement, this piece here in the Hockey News, I don't know what is. So someone for like TJ Oshie to say that is quite a compliment, I guess I got to say it, if you think about it, that I hope my sons grow up like you. So just everyone that is characterizing him in a certain way, I don't think that TJ Oshie would want his sons to grow up, if Tom Wilson was anything else other than a great human being, a great hockey player, a great leader, a great man. And today, this is what this podcast about, is a celebration of Tom Wilson signing his new deal on this team. And this is a big deal, Capitals fans. Mark this one down on your calendar. And this will be one of the deals that we look back on in years and go, Wilson signing that new deal, this and this and this happened. Down the road, another cup they might win, or another great accomplishment, or Tom Wilson is the future captain. These are the moments to treasure as Capitals fans, because I take this all very seriously. As I do this show 5 nights a week, a majority of the year. So I take it seriously, and I'm happy, and I care a lot. That's why there's a lot of emotion involved in all this. But for me, this is a big day for me. For me, as a fan of the team, as someone that covers this team, and I hope it is all for you as well. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. And are you a fan of other DC sports? Well, Locked On has got you covered. We got Locked On Nationals, Commanders, and Wizards. So no matter what major DC sport it is, Locked On has got you covered. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.